Hello, so today we are going to take a look at an example here where we do a nice transition from this line here to an elevation with the shadows. So for you can see here we have a line before we scroll up, but once we scroll up the list up, we start getting an elevation and the line disappears. And once I scroll down again until the top of the list, I go from the shadow back to the line, right? So let's do it again. So you can see it transitions, it animates from the line to the shadow or the elevation, shadow with the elevation, and then once I scroll up until the beginning of the list, it goes back to the list. It goes back to the line, just because if we have only a line, if we have like the elevation while the list is fully scrolled up, it doesn't look great, right? And especially with material design, since we want like sort of paper, like when you put something underneath something, you want the thing on top to have an elevation. But since in this situation, the list is not below the header, we don't want to have the elevation. And so we can choose to have, for example, this line as a separator before the list is scrolled below the header. But once we scroll it below the header, we fade the title away, or we fade the divider, the line divider away, and add the elevation to the header. So you can see it like this, right? And then let me do it again. Okay. So this is what we are going to go through, how to implement this transition animation from the line to when you scroll the list up. It becomes an elevation on the header, and then once we scroll it up again, it becomes a line. So this here is just because we have pull to refresh on the list. Okay. Okay, so let's take a look here at what we have. So I have this layout here in the main activity that is running here, and if we take a look, what we have is we have this text view that is behind here, and then we just have a constraint layout for the content here that contains this pull indicator here, just to indicate that you can pull the sheet up, and it has a header, which is this header here. And then we have the divider line here, and then after that we have a list view, and the list view is wrapped with a refresh layout just so that we can refresh. So pretty straightforward. In the main activity, we just set up the list view with the adapter with a set of items. So you can see item 1 up until probably item 25 or something, or 24. And then we have the swipe to refresh layout set up here. We don't need to go into that. The main thing we need to go into is how are we accomplishing this transition here? How are we accomplishing that? And so the views that we need to focus on are this header along with so we have this container here that is just a constraint layout that contains the entire top content. So it contains the pull indicator here, it contains the header text, and it contains the divider. So you can see here it contains, if I go over like this, so it contains the pull indicator, the header, and the divider, right? So this is the portion that we want to change the elevation for once we scroll up. So this is where we want to change the elevation, right? And you can see here I'm achieving that with this stateless animator. We will go into more details with this soon. And then this is the divider that is by default shown in the when the list is scrolled up. So by default it's shown. So we have the divider. It just it has 1 dp in height. It takes the entire width, match parent, and we just add the margin 6 dp from the left and this from the right to align with the list items. And so we have margin start and margin end here. And it's the two things that we are animating here is the elevation of the entire container, including the pull, header, and divider, right? When we scroll up, and then the hiding and showing of the divider. So those two elements are the ones that we are animating. And so you can see here we are accomplishing this with the stateless animator. So I have this stateless animator here on the container that we will need to change the elevation for, and on the divider that we'll need to hide show, right? we can do that using an alpha, for example. To hide, we set the alpha to 0, and to show, we set the alpha to 1, and this will allow the divider to be hidden gradually, not just suddenly disappear, right? Now, what does stateless animator do here? So let's take a look. So stateless animator, so it just lets you define a set of animators that will run on the view that you set it on. So here, for example, it will run on the divider that we set it on, depending on the view's drawable state. So depending on a specific state, we can say do this animation, do this property, and if it's in this state, do this other property. So yeah, depending on the view's drawable state. Okay, and so if you take a look here, for example, for the divider that we want to transition from alpha 0 to alpha 1, I chose, for example, that when state is selected to true, the divider should be visible. So we set the alpha to 1, and when the state is hidden, we set it to 0, right? So this is a little bit of a kind of workaround to use state selected, just because what I'm saying here is that when the list is fully scrolled up, the divider should be considered selected, right? And this is like, it's not really like selection by the user. It's just, we could use any other attribute. We can use state activated. This is just so that we don't have to create our own custom attribute here, which would be really cumbersome to do. So this is just a workaround, right? And so just keep in mind, state selected, you could use any of the other attributes enabled. But this would mean is that if you, to get the divider to be visible, we need to set on the divider view, we need to set it's selected to true. We need to say something like divider. So let's say we have a reference to the divider view. If we do is selected equal to true, then the view will look at this stateless animator and say, okay, if it was before selected equal to false, and now it became selected to true, then it will set its alpha to 1, and so it will be visible. Now if you set it to false, then it will apply this state here, which is the alpha equal to 0, and it will be hidden, right? And one thing to note here is that we have this duration of the animation here. Basically it says transition from alpha 0 to alpha 1 using that animation duration, and so it will slowly fade away. And then similar thing when transitioning from selected to true to selected to false, right? And so, as I said, we can use any other attribute. We can use is state is enabled, since this is just a workaround. But if we use state is enabled to get the divider to show up, we need to have is enabled equal to true, right? So this is pretty much what this does. Okay, so now let's see what else. Yeah, so this is on the divider, right? So we figured out that we have this stateless animator, and to animate from hidden to visible, we need to set state selected to true, and to animate from visible to hidden, we need to set is selected to false, right? Okay, so now let's see the other component, the entire header that we need to change the elevation for. So here I have also a stateless animator, so depending on the state of the view, and I will use state selected as well here. It will either have the elevation 4 dp or 0 dp. What this would mean is that if it's selected, I would have an elevation of 4 dp. So what this would mean is when you scroll up, I want to set the state to selected so that it can transition to having an elevation of 4 dp. And once the list is fully scrolled up, I want to transition to selected to false so that the elevation is 0. And same thing again, we transition from one to the other slowly using this direction here, right? And so here again, similar thing, if we want the header to have an elevation, we can just take the container, right? The view here, right? Let's say we got a reference to it, and we need to say is selected equal to true, and that will transition it to have an elevation of 4 dp, right? And if we set it to false, it will transition to having an elevation of 0 dp, right? Now, notice something here. So to when do we want tab content container to have an elevation, right? When do we want that? We want that when the list is scrolled up. When the list is scrolled up and we have an item under, and we have part of it under header, right? So only when the list is scrolled up, we want it to have the elevation. Once we scroll it down, when list is fully scrolled down, we want elevation to be 0, right? So that we can only show the divider. Okay, and so what this would mean is that basically list scrolled up, right? We need the elevation to be visible, and so to do that we need state selected equal to true so that this animation happen, right? Animation to 4GP. So we need to say is selected equal to true, of course, for this here. And then when the list is scrolled down, fully scrolled down, we want this to be false so that we get elevation 0, so that we get only the divider to be shown. And a similar thing here for the divider. If we take a look, what do we want here? So what we want is, if the list is fully scrolled up, we want the divider to be visible, right? So we want the divider to be visible, and so for the divider to be visible, we need state selected to true, right? So here, when the list is scrolled up under header, let's just make this super clear. So under header, when the list is scrolled up under header, what we want is the divider to be visible. Divider should be visible. And so to do that, we can just divider to be visible here. Let me just show the divider animation. We want it to be selected, and so that would mean divider is selected equal to true. And then list scrolled fully scrolled down. Sorry about that. Typo there. List fully scrolled down. So when the list is fully scrolled down, that's where we want the divider to be visible. When the list is scrolled up under the header, we want it to be hidden, right? So let me just reverse this. So when the list is fully scrolled up, we want the divider to be scrolled down, we want the divider to be visible. So we set is selected to true. So here, the divider should be hidden, right? And so we set is selected to false, so that in the divider animation, we will have alpha set to 0, right? So these are the rules. So let's take. So how do we enable that then? Since we said we need to set is selected to true, so we need to do this actually in the activity, because that's where we can change the property here. So let's take a look back at the activity here, and let's just change these to be in a comment. Keep these in a comment like this, okay? Okay, so I have here a reference to the tab content container view and then to the divider, right? So I have these two. And to detect when the list is scrolled up under header or is fully scrolled down, we attach a scroll listener to the list view, right? And that scroll listener has this callback called onScrolled, which is just a callback that the recycler view will invoke once it has been scrolled, right? So it will be called after the scroll has happened, right? And so now to detect if the list is scrolled up under the header or is fully scrolled down, we can use this thing called can scroll vertically. And this will just check if the view can be scrolled vertically in a certain direction. And so if we give it direction negative, it will check if the view can be scrolled up. So it will check if the view can be scrolled up. When can the view scrolled up? So if the view is fully scrolled down like this, it can be scrolled up, right? If you scroll up, nothing will happen, right? And so if it's like this, it's scrolled under the header, then it can be scrolled up. So we kind of will use that. So can scroll vertically. So this would mean here, we pass negative. So if you pass negative, that means we want to know to check scrolling up So we want to check if, so here passing -1 means check if negative, check if can be scrolled up, right? And so this would mean basically if true, right? So this would mean it can be scrolled up like this. So this would mean it's scrolled under the header. It's scrolled up under the header. Okay. So this is exactly what we want. So let's scroll under the header. We want to set the top content container to is selected to true. And so now if it's not, then it's fully scrolled down. It's like this. We can't scroll anymore, right? So we want to set it to false. So that's exactly what we want. So what this would mean is just the result of this, we need to set it for the top content view is selected value. And so if it's fully scrolled, if it's scrolled up under the header, this would be true, this would be is selected, and the elevation would be set. The reverse for the divider. The divider, we want to show it only if the list is not scrolled up under the header, right? So that's why we take not. We inverse the Boolean here. And so once we set the property, the animation, the state animation that we set, the state animator that we set will take care of doing the transition of the alpha property for the divider and for the elevation property for the top content. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for how to do this. So to recap, what are we using for this? We are using here, if we take a look at the XML file, we are using for the container that we want to change the elevation for, we are using a stateless animator that animates from an elevation of 4 dp to 0 or from 0 back to 4 dp. And then for the divider, we are using also a stateless animator with state selected attribute that animates from alpha 1 to 0 or back. And then to set these attributes to get the animation is we are using a list scroll listener, so that we can detect if the list is scrolled under the header. If it is, we set the top content to selected so that the animation will set it the elevation to 4 dp, right? And if it's fully scrolled up, then we want to not have an elevation, so we set is selected to false for the top content, making the elevation 0, and so allowing us to not have the elevation in this state. And a similar thing for the divider. If the list is fully scrolled under the header, we want the divider to be hidden, so we hide it. So that's why we are setting the reverse of this. And again, this animator will take care of animating it when it's not selected to alpha, when it's not selected to alpha 0, so that it's hidden. Yeah, so that's pretty much all there is to it. Stateless animator on the view, and to animate the property that you want, and the scroll listener here just to detect which state the view should transition to, it should animate to, essentially. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for this problem, for this example. Thanks for watching, and see you on the next one. Bye.